You are walking down the street in your city or town. You want to talk about an event that you find interesting. It is one of your favorite events, and you want to tell someone who speaks English about this event that's happening now in Japan, in your city. How do you do this? That's what we're going to cover on today's episode of the Social English Podcast. Stick around.
今日は英語修理店のエピソードです。英語を勉強している日本人が英語の間違いを正してくれないかと尋ねました。これを実際の会話英語で行ってみます。
Hey everybody, Percy here. Welcome back to another episode of the Social English Podcast. Now, today we have another great episode of the English Repair Shop. And you pretty much know what goes on in these episodes. But first, I want to tell the new listeners to this podcast, I want to give you greetings and welcome you to this podcast. If you are a returning listener, I just want to say thank you for listening and all of your support. Now, let's get to today's episode. We have another episode of the English Repair Shop, where a Japanese listener who is having problems with English has asked me to help them with their English. So that is what we're going to do. They wanted me to ask them to correct their English because they're having issues and they want to make sure that it is right. So let's do that together. Now, with every single English Repair Shop episode, we have 4 parts. In part 1, I will read exactly what the Japanese person said in the wrong English. In part 2, I will say what the correct English in a conversational social English style would sound like. In part 3, I will give you any tips or any tricks or hints that I think are important to today's episode so you don't make these same mistakes. In part 4, I will say the corrected English version in a fast, natural speed. This way, you can also practice your listening skills, your English listening skills. So, if you are a beginner, you are just starting, or a low level, please listen carefully. This podcast is in all English, so please listen carefully, or play the podcast at 0.5 speed if you need to. If you are an intermediate listener, this episode should be very simple and perfect for you. And if you are an advanced learner, this episode is still useful because you will see some common mistakes that many Japanese students learning English, or just people that are learning English, you will see many of the mistakes they made so that you can also focus on not making some of these simple mistakes, as well as understand not the written English, but speaking, the conversational, speaking, social English. Okay? You get to understand a different kind of English, like speaking conversational English style for social situations. That is social English. So, let's get started with part 1. Please listen carefully. 1. Now, in part 1, remember, this is the Japanese learner of English, the Japanese student. This is his wrong English, and this is the English they want me to correct. Let's start with part 1. 1. Do you like to see paintings or artworks? 2. I love arts. 3. I just went to see Banksy in Fukuoka. 4. It was awesome. Okay, let's do that one more time with just the English parts only. 1. Do you like... Oh, just the English parts only. Okay. Okay, let me do that again. Do you like to see paintings or artworks? I love arts. I just went to see Banksy in Fukuoka. It was awesome. Okay. So, first, before we start with the correct social English in part 2, I just want to ask you, how would you correct this English? How would you fix this? Next, I want to tell you a little something. This doesn't have many mistakes. So sometimes just don't worry about having mistakes and just practice your English. Okay, let's go to part 2. This is the correct social English, or English at a slow speed. Number 1. Do you like looking at paintings or any kinds of artwork? Number 2. I love art. Number 3. I just went to see Banksy in Fukuoka. Number 4. It was awesome. Okay, this time I will say the corrected English again with just the English only. Please listen. Do you like looking at paintings or any kind of artwork? I love art. I just went to see Banksy in Fukuoka. It was awesome. Okay. So that's part 2. And if you are an advanced or even intermediate, you can hear some of the corrections. So let's talk about that in part 3. Let's start. Many times there aren't many mistakes in a student's English. This is good because it means you are improving. Sometimes we have a saying in English, less is more. You don't need to add an S to artworks or arts because these words can mean one or more than one. So, for advanced learners, of course, these words are both singular and plural, so you don't need to add an S to them. Now, let's move on to part 4, the natural fast speed of social English. Please listen. Now, I will repeat it so you will hear it 2 times. Let's get started. Do you like looking at paintings or any kind of artwork? I love art. I just went to see Banksy in Fukuoka. It was awesome. Do you like looking at paintings or any kinds of artwork? I love art. I just went to see Banksy in Fukuoka. It was awesome.
このショーを気に入っていただけたら、5つ星のレビューをぜひお願いします。コメントは英語か日本語でお書きいただければ喜んで読ませていただきます。リアルソーシャルイングリッシュ .com にアクセスしてぜひ無料でダウンロードしてください。ほとんどの日本人の英語を勉強している人がやってしまいがちな7つの間違いとその正しい言い方。また、毎日英語を上達させるのに役立つ資料もたくさんあります。Apple Podcast、Google Podcast、Stitcher、そして今はパンドラでもポッドキャストを購読いただきます。支援者になっていただけませんか？私たちがこのショーを作るための支援として5ドルの寄付をお願いできませんか？今後のエピソードで感謝の気持ちをお伝えします。また、そこでしか利用できない新しいコンテンツも入手できます。patreon.com/socialenglish からご参加ください。ソーシャルメディアで私たちのポッドキャストを友達にシェアしたり、Twitter、Facebook、Instagram のフォローをお願いします。
Alright, everyone, there you got it. That is the corrected version, and that is how you talk about telling someone about going to a Banksy art exhibit. And that's how you tell someone in English about the exhibit, how you felt about it, and your experience. I hope you learned something that you can use for yourself in your own study of English. Don't forget to listen to episodes 126 through 131 about beginning conversations and how to make one. This is the IIWC pattern. It is very interesting. You have to listen to it. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow us. Also, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I'd really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next episode. Peace and love.
今日は楽しい時間をありがとうございました。ぜひ私たちのウェブサイト realsocialenglish.com を訪問して日本語訳と役立つ情報を手に入れてください。また次回お会いしましょう。バイバイ。See you next time. Bye bye.